everyone, my name's Sam. I'm a natural bodybuilder and a physique coach. And if you're trying to build impressive, well-developed legs, I think you're gonna absolutely love this video. I'm gonna show you the two main exercises that I've been performing consistently to develop specifically my hamstrings. And those two movements are Romanian deadlifts and leg curls. I'm gonna show you how I warm up to them, how I set up for them, how I do them. So my hope is in sharing this with you, you might find something in here that works really well for you too. If you have any questions about anything that I share, please feel free to leave them as a comment below and I'm gonna do the best I can to answer. That all being said, I'm pumped for this, so let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, we're starting with these Romanian deadlifts. Before I start doing my first challenging working sets, I always start with multiple warm-up sets, as you can see here, where I'm using a load, an amount of weight that's not terribly challenging. It's not taxing my muscles very much, but what it's doing is it's allowing me to literally warm up my musculature and my body. But not only that, it's allowing me an opportunity to practice the movement pattern, get my head in the right place before I actually use the really challenging working weight for my main sets. I like to think of it similarly to how a musician would warm up before performing in front of an audience an entire recital. Usually they'll spend at least a little bit of time warming up towards doing their rep in like a rehearsal room or a warm-up room before they go and play the whole performance in front of an audience full of people. Same idea here. The idea is you practice the movements, or the idea is I practice my movement pattern with a weight that's not terribly stressful so that I can, so to speak, get it really under my fingers and I feel really prepared from a physical and a mental standpoint to go ahead and get into the really challenging, tough, heavy working weight that I'm going to be moving into for my working sets. Now, you might notice that I'm standing on some risers here. Reason for that being is it's allowing me to move with a little bit more depth. I can move, well, if I didn't have that there, then the plates would hit the ground before I would get to the point where I can move with as much depth as possible. And the reason I want to move with as much depth as possible, because that super deep position that you can see here at the bottom is the spot where my hamstrings and my glutes are basically as elongated as I can get away with, as they possibly can be in this context. So why am I going out of my way to get to that position? Well, it's shown that when your muscles are under stress, they're experiencing mechanical tension in that super elongated and stretched out position. It happens to be incredibly stimulative for muscle growth. So shoot, I'm going to go out of my way to reach that position and move in and out of it because, hey, I want to build bigger hamstrings and glutes too. So this is my first working set here, moved up to, I think that's 325 pounds. Couple things to note here is the weight is really heavy for me, especially with this style of lifting, the way that I'm moving with this tempo, adding the pauses in the stretched position at the bottom there, which I'll touch on in a second. But even so, I'm fighting this ongoing battle to maintain that kind of control and technique. I don't want to get to a place in the set where I'm losing control. At that point, the set should really be over. And it is a battle because it is very heavy. It's very challenging. It's a fight. I have to really think hard and put a lot of intent and effort into making sure that I keep my technique as consistent as I possibly can. It sure as heck isn't important. And you can notice my thoracic spine or my upper back, especially as I come up, as I hinge upward, it kind of rounds forward a little bit in my last 2 or 3 reps. It's not the end of the world. It's probably not injurious, but it's different than how it looks at the beginning of the set. I'm allowing myself a little bit of grace with that because I suspect it's not terribly injurious because my lower back is staying really straight and well supported, and I'm putting in a lot of effort to brace my midsection. And it's also allowing me to push my hamstrings and glutes closer to what their failure point is. In short, it's giving me an opportunity to get a little bit more stimulus, probably for muscle growth. Now, I want to note too that I'm actually going out of my way to pause at the bottom of each rep as well. So I'm moving with control on the way down, a little bit faster on the way up, but still with control, and really sitting in that super stretched position at the bottom of each rep. Reason for that being is primarily, and hopefully it's giving me or providing me with a little bit more stimulus for muscle growth, and also that I can really feel a stretch. I really feel my hamstrings at the bottom of that pause there. And if anything, it's helping me to really develop my mind muscle connection. And if I use that as an indicator, because I really feel my hamstrings, if I'm using that as an indicator that I'm getting a good amount of stimulus for muscle growth because I really feel the target muscle, then that is definitely a good thing. So I'm going to keep pausing. I don't always do it, but in this kind of rotation for me, I've been really diligent to hold myself to keeping the pauses in the bottom position as I've been progressing in weight and trying to get more reps. For my first set, my target is 10 reps. I couldn't hit it. Only got 9 reps. I've actually been stuck at this weight for 9 reps for a little while, but I'm going to keep getting after it. And next up, we have the leg curls. The hamstrings have 2 main functions. The first of which being hip extension, which is the exact movement you undergo when you're doing a Romanian deadlift. It's a hip hinge. And the second main function is knee flexion, bending the knee, exactly what you're doing in a leg curl, like I'm doing here. I will be the first person to admit that for the first years that I lifted weights, I kind of overlooked the exercise. Like I spent a lot of time squatting and focusing on like leg extensions and leg presses for my quads. And I kind of just wrote off my hamstring work as an understatement, especially with the leg curls. And I think that was a little bit of a mistake in my earlier years of lifting, because the hamstrings at the end of the day, that the development of that muscle really is what makes a really complete, well-developed leg. It's not all about the quads. And don't get me wrong, I still love training quads, but hamstring training is really important too. And I think it really is important to put the same amount of intent that you would put into like doing squats, leg presses, hack squats into your lower body or your hamstring type of movements as well, like the leg curls. Even though they're an isolation exercise, they're a dang good one. What I'm doing is doing my best anyways to be really intentional with the movement. Good control on the way down, pausing at the bottom. I love this machine because I can really feel the tension in that bottom stretched out position. It's not like that with every machine. So many different hamstring or leg curl machines, they feel different. They're built a little bit differently. I really like this one. Anyways, I'm moving with the most intent that I can move with. Control on the way down, little pause on the bottom, trying to feel the tension, the bottom of each rep, explosively on the way up. And I'm actually doing a couple of drop sets. I do three working sets, but at the end of my third working set, I will do 2 follow-up drop sets where I'll decrease the load by several increments and do as many reps as I can. Then I'll drop the load by several increments a third time and then do as many reps as I can. And I'll even try to squeeze out a couple partials. A partial is where you only go part the way up once you're too fatigued to do a full range of motion rep. So they're lengthened partials. You're doing part of the movement when your muscles are in a lengthened position, and that is quite possibly adding a little bit more stimulus for muscle growth at the end of these sets here. To give you a little bit more context, I train with a full body split 6 days a week, where it works out that I end up doing the Romanian deadlifts twice over the course of those 6 days, and I do the leg curls twice over the course of those 6 days as well, and I do them each in a different session. So I'll only do 1 hamstring movement per session. Also worth noting is I do 3 working sets for each of those exercises. And also I do another exercise that probably hits the hamstrings at least a little bit, and that is Bulgarian split squats from a deficit. although it probably doesn't stimulate your hamstrings the same way that a leg curl does or a hip hinge like a Romanian deadlift does. To my knowledge, the Bulgarian split squats, they stimulate the short head of the biceps femoris, which is one of the parts of the hamstrings a little bit. So it might lead to some muscle growth stimulus, but I wouldn't go out of my way to do a Bulgarian split squat purely for the purpose of building bigger hamstrings. I'll rely more so on the leg curls and the Romanian deadlifts for that. And that's it. That's all. Those are the only exercises that I'm doing for my hamstrings. I don't do anything more than that because I suspect anything on top of that just will become redundant. That those two movements are really effective for me. Like the day after I do my Romanian deadlifts, I'm almost always sore. And if I'm using that as an indicator of letting me know, like, hey, have you been getting enough stimulus for muscle growth? If I do use that as an indicator, then it's probable that I'm getting more than enough stimulus from muscle growth, especially with the addition of the leg curls as well. I can also speak from my own past experience that when I do include a higher frequency of hamstring training, so I do more sets, I train them more often than I am right now, they are more likely to lead me to developing an injury, even if I do get a little bit more stimulus. So for example, in the past, I've developed some pretty uncomfortable nagging pain in the backs of my knees, probably through some combination of doing leg curls relatively frequently in combination with doing Romanian deadlifts relatively frequently as well. It also could have been related to the loads that I was using, the technique that I was implementing at the time. But even so, right now with the exercise variety that I have, which is, it's pretty minimalistic, just two movements, each covering one of the main functions of the hamstrings, hip extension and knee flexion. Just with those two movements, I think that I'm getting more than enough stimulus for building that muscle. So anyways, just a couple thoughts with you so that you get an idea of more of the full context of how I'm implementing these two movements for my own hamstring development. And hopefully something in there you might find works well for you, even if it just gives you a couple of ideas to play with or to think about with your own training. That all being said, thanks for being here. If you liked this video, please like it. Subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Anyways, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.